Hello, this is my artist presentation on Tierney Gearon with the term double exposure. Born in Atlanta, Georgia, Gearon hadn't planned or envisioned being a photographer as her dream. In fact, it was ultimately a result of chance. At first, she had imagined being a mother as the ultimate goal in her life, as she was a model and commercial photographer for her career. Only until events involving her marriage later occurred, which led her to turn the camera on her own family during their trips around the world. Charles Saatchi would then discover Gearon's photography and feature her in his I Am a Camera exhibit in 2001, which you could consider her personal photography career begin date. Ultimately, this led to a controversy that would skyrocket her career, but in the current day, Gearon resides in Malibu, in California, with her 4 children. Going back to her controversy, Gearon's exhibit didn't sit well with some viewers among the photographs that she showcased, one of which featured her 2 sons posed nude, as seen here, and another of her son peeing in the snow. Media coverage of her work ensued about whether it was right to do so, but ultimately led to exposure for her exhibited work. Regardless of all the news surrounding it, the family-focused nature of Gearon's work was made clear in her debut and continues to remain that way even today. In terms of education, Gearon attended the University of Utah in 1984, but her major and other educational background isn't known. For her accomplishments, she was featured in a multitude of galleries and museums. Most notable of those, as listed in her biography, were the Gagosian Gallery in 2001, the Yossi Milo in 2006, the Parrish Art Museum in 2007, the Scottish National Portrait Gallery in 2007, and the Phillips de Pury and Company in 2008, and most recently, the Ace Gallery in 2009, which took place in California. Before going on to some of her works, I want to define what double exposure is. By definition, it is a combination of 2 exposures into one image. Others also describe it as 2 images superimposed onto each other, but the meaning is essentially the same. To create an image using double exposure, editing softwares can be used by changing the opacity of layered images. This allows them to essentially combine into one, as they don't completely cover one another. Another method which could be considered a little more traditional is using film and double exposing it by loading already shot film into the camera and shooting over it again. Tierney Gearon uses this more traditional method in her exposure exhibition, which consists of only double exposed images. Next are the examples of Gearon's work. To keep in mind, none of the images are uniquely titled, and the exact medium and dimensions aren't listed anywhere. First is this image from her exposure exhibition in 2001 using double exposed film. Here is another from her exposure exhibition, which also uses double exposed film. Next is another entitled image from her The Mother Project in 2006 that focused on her own mother, where I presume film photography was used. Here's another image from the Mother Project, which is also entitled. And lastly, we have this image from her debut exhibition, I Am a Camera, and is cited as being from the year 2000, which appears to be taken through film photography as well. Some other works and contributions of Tierney Gearon that I felt I had to share were Daddy, Where Are You?, which is a 70-portrait book of Tierney Gearon's family. Another is the Alphabet Book, which is a family-friendly children's alphabet book that features her own children and their friends. And lastly, she was commissioned to direct the Hollywood Heroines video gallery for the New York Times, who described it as 13 actresses whose performances defined the year in film. Next are my own original images. This is mine, which I called Farm to Table 2022. In this image, I used Focus, which is an app on the phone, to emulate the double exposure effect, and with it, some of the complications of film where you can't reverse your exposure. I decided to make a connection between two aspects of my home, being our outside garden and the kitchen, and having to actually carefully frame the images the best I could was fairly difficult. And in my journey in trying to take a picture using this double exposure method, nothing was worse than the feeling of taking a good initial image and then ruining the second one, which led to me having to throw out the entire composition and finding something else to take a picture of. I love the concept of a double exposure image and working around how to blend two sometimes completely different settings, and overall it served as a nice challenge. Next, I have another original image that I felt I wanted to share as well, called The Menace 2022, which features my wonderful dog Pocky. I kept this emulation of a double exposure because I felt it encompassed his attitude. I overall just liked how the image looked with him appearing to climb on top of the porch of my house. And it shows his furry and lovable side, but also the destructive side of him that loves to make a mess of things. And though there are some things I would like to change in this image, it goes to show some of the complications of double exposure, and something you'll especially see if you're doing it with film photography where an exposure will stay there. And overall, making sure the shot you're taking is the shot you want, or else things might look a bit off. Thank you for listening to my presentation. Here are the resources that I used, including the artist's website, a website on how to create double exposure, and a biography on Tierney Gearon from another website.